To understand this era, you sort of needed to understand the past, and the past can be a foil for understanding the present. I mean, there are some lessons in the past that can help us think better about what we're doing today and even about the merits of our medical treatment. So I decided to go back, all the way back to colonial times, and that's sort of the story we'll tell today. And hopefully in this first part we'll see some of the lessons that the past can teach us that are relevant, I think, to us today. So if you go back to colonial times, 1700s, the first hospital opens in Philadelphia in 1756, I think it is. And at this time, you have sort of a flourishing mad medicine in England. There's madhouses, etc. And they teach mad medicine in like the University of Edinburgh, etc. And the key thing is this. At this time, this is the age of reason. And so the mad, by virtue of having lost their reason, were seen as having descended to a lower level, to a brutish level, to an animal level, because reason is seen as what separates man from the animals. So once you have that conception as the mad as brutes, well, what do? Treatment follows conception. So when that first hospital opened, they kept some cells in their basement. They put straw in there. They were unheated, and that's where they put the mad. Now, one of the things, this is part of the other, is the mad were seen as insensitive to heat and cold, like animals, for example. They didn't need, they maybe didn't even need clothing, etc. So that's one thing. Second thing you'll see in the founding documents is how they were looked over by keepers. Think of the zoo keepers. And some of the elements they had whips, handcuffs, that sort of thing, chains, etc. But it all arose, frankly, from this conception of the mentally ill as mad. And in those early days, it was also like visiting a zoo. The public could come on Saturday, Sunday, look at the mad, and they pay a pence, that sort of thing, and exhibit these and see these raving lunatics. Now, we do start to get some reform even in those colonial days when Benjamin Rush arrives at the Pennsylvania Hospital in 1783. He is a Quaker, and if you look at Quaker traditions in the United States, they are a progressive group early on. They have this wonderful conception of brethren. And that part of Benjamin Rush does get him to make changes. So he builds a new wing at the hospital. He takes them out of the cells. He starts, he wants to have the rooms actually some comfort, etc. So we start to see that they furnished the rooms with hair mattresses and feather beds. However, at the same time, he was a medical man. He believed in a medical model of treating psychiatric disorders. He had studied at the University of Edinburgh, and there he had incorporated medical treatments for mental illness for his patients. And what did you see in those mad medical texts? You saw therapies, if they could weaken the patient, they were good. In other words, if you would make them vomit a lot, that was good. Or if you gave them diarrhea, that was good. If you had treatments that instilled fear in them, that was thought to help manage people. Now, we may laugh at treatments that are designed to weaken people, make them sort of less physically capable, but you can see why, if you're someone managing an asylum, if you weaken people, diminish their ability to move about physically, that might be seen as a good change. Now, Benjamin Rush also had a conception of mental disorders as due to, as he said, morbid and irregular actions in the blood vessels of the brain. And so it's really a circulatory imbalance story. He thought madness and mania was caused by too much blood rushing to the brain, and he thought depression and melancholy, as it was at the time, and morbid conditions were caused by too little blood rushing to the brain. So what did he do for madness? In other words, mania, that sort of thing. He thought you had to reduce the flow of blood to the brain, and he would do so this in a couple of ways. He would bleed you profusely. I mean, really copiously. He would also pour ice on your head, and that seems cooling, he's cooling down the head, etc. How about depression? Well, you want to cause blood to go to the brain, so you put people on a spinning board. You would put the feet in the middle of the spinning board. You would have that board run around like this, and blood would rush to the head. And he thought he was fixing an imbalance in the brain. Now, This is a medical model. We sometimes think with DSM-3 we finally get a medical model. He writes a textbook in 1812. His is a medical model. He's saying it is a biological problem. He's fixing it. And now the very first psychiatric treatment that sort of developed in the U.S. that then is going to be exported to Europe was Benjamin Rush's tranquilizer chair. I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of this. Basically, think about a wooden toilet, and then with armrest, they would strap the person's arm to the rest, they'd strap the legs to the chair, and then by toilet, I mean because they're going to be strapped there for hours, even days, and you need something to defecate. And then, as part of this treatment, they would pour ice on the head to cool down the head. Anyway, here's what he describes it, the chair. It binds and confines every part of the body. By keeping the trunk erect, it lessens the impetus of blood toward the brain. By preventing the muscles from acting, it prevents the force and frequency of the pulse. In other words, it keeps blood flowing upwards. And by the position of the head and feet favors the easy application of cold water or ice to the former and warm water to the latter. Okay, again, just trying to fix the circulation. Its effects have been truly delightful to me. It acts as a sedative to the tongue, people aren't speaking up so much anymore, and temper as well as to the blood vessels. In 24, 12, 6, and in some cases in 4 hours, the most refractory patients have been composed. I call it a tranquilizer. Now, if you go to a museum, you may see one of these chairs, and we think, you know, how abusive it is. There are stories of people being kept in the chairs for days, weeks, even months. But think about this. Does Rush think he's fixing something? He does. Right? He thinks he's fixing chemical imbalance. Do you think it changed the person? It did, right? I'm sure it did quiet the person. It did make them less able to sort of be agitated and responsive. You, I'm pretty sure, could do a clinical trial today, and the tranquilizer chair would prove to be effective in that clinical trial. And all I'm saying is this. What do you see in this first period of American sort of care? You see someone who I think is he's one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, by the way. Benjamin Rush was a Quaker. He was not an evil man. He was not a malicious man. But what you do see is how certain treatments come from the conception of who you're treating. And I think you do maybe see, back in the slim, it is very easy to be deluded a little bit about the merits of your therapies right from this beginning, because I can imagine you're the one being put in that chair. Do you think you want to be in that chair for 12 hours, 18 hours, 24 hours? You might have a very different understanding of the merits of that treatment.